Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this planet that we live on. Hope everyone out there is feeling well. My name is Adamantium, and welcome to this edition of AAU TZM Podcasts. And just as a general announcement for those of you listening to this on YouTube right now, my podcasts also exist on talkshoe.com. You can find a direct link to the page in the video description of this video, but that out of the way. Also, as a little celebratory note, for those of you who have been following this since the beginning, you'll already know that this show marks the 1-year birthday of AAU TZM Podcasts. So obviously, this time last year was the tentative beginnings of AAU TZM Podcasts, where I did an introduction show. I have to get round to listening to that show again at some point just to figure out where I've come from and where I am now. But yeah, happy birthday AAU TZM Podcasts. You are one today. I'm proud of you. Anyway, carrying on. Straight on to the topic of this current show. I'm very happy to announce the return of Sir. I know there's some weird in-joke about calling Ben Sir, but Mr. Ben McLeish to talk about what comprises the RBE Zeitgeist. So if you'd like to say hello, Ben.
Yes, welcome. Well, thanks very much, man. That's cool. Yeah, the Sir thing is strange, isn't it? It came from, I think Peter said it on a radio show once. He just decided to call me Sir Ben McLeish. So it's a very odd thing to inherit, but I haven't used it myself yet, but I might.
It might be a little indication as to, it might be like the secret handshake to our secret society, our Freemason sort of thing.
So, people probably think I'm just insane. But yes, well, yeah, thanks for having me back, man.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, basically, I've broken this down into two main parts, really. You know, talking about what comprises mainly the RBE value set, as it were, both for the individual and for society. So we'll see how much we can ponder on for the individual to begin with. So if you're okay to dive straight into this?
Yeah, sure. I can set up something about the individual. So, I mean, when we're talking about the kind of things that we do, ultimately we are talking about a very particular kind of society, and that's one where we've put technology and the scientific method at the center. And now, what kind of society is that if you take that step, if you meet those needs, so to speak? So the first thing, since we're starting with the individual, is that the individuals in the society are not the same as us. They think very differently. There are no people who, for example, would indiscriminately use lots of plastic bags. That's just gone, you know, that sort of behavior is gone. Because the kind of society we've created is based on the general consensus of being not wasteful. So when we are talking about this to begin with, we have to remember that we're thinking into a position that's not just a different organization of things, but a different way that people look at and interact with those particular social elements anyway.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. So we want to start talking about maybe the most important thing which people immediately bring up, which is personal freedoms. You know, how free are you in a society like this? In a society of deliberate control of resources, control and management and all the rest of it, isn't that another form of control? You know, how can I orientate myself openly? Because people think they're free in this system now, don't they? So absolutely paramount, and actually it's something that's expressed by Jacques Fresco quite well in The Best That Money Can't Buy, is that there isn't any surveillance of the population, because an educated population doesn't actually need any deliberate control. And it's actually a waste of resources to monitor people indiscriminately the way that we do now. And we always have to come back to that. At the moment we have, Adam, I don't know if you've seen this, today's story or yesterday's story was that shopping centers are now tracking individual shoppers by their mobile phones, right?
Really?
Watched as they move around the store, And so people can sense patterns and exploit those patterns for selling more shit to them, right? So
God.
this is all kinds of surveillance, right? There's the criminal kind, and then there's the kind that's trying to work out all of your associations and exploit them, right? That's gone because it's a waste of resources. And in a society where you've maximized technological efficiency, you're not having to hawk a load of stuff to people all the time, right? So it's almost no advertising. I say almost no because I reckon that there is some kind of advertising you can define which is actually a public service but isn't just a public service announcement, if you see what I mean. And that's very nebulous to say that. But, I mean, basically the overt or even subvert advertising that you're going to be confronted by isn't going to exist. So that also means you're going to feel very different. And I think when people aren't advertised to through flickering screens, I think they feel better about themselves. And I think that people feel free. You're like, someone's not occupying my fucking eyes, basically. Giant stuff, or the radio adverts, which are deliberately annoying to make you remember them, right? It knows somebody worked out somewhere that your associations mean if it's irritating, as a noise, you're more likely to ingest it and have it as an earworm, right? Have it running around in your head.
Yeah.
Deliberately manufactured. So you don't have that. And I think when you don't have that kind of pressure, which it's pressure, then people are going to feel actually intrinsically quite free within their society.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I was talking about today with someone, I just feel my mind feels so much, well, to use a strange word, it feels much more cleaner because I don't watch television anymore. I haven't watched television for over 7 or 8 months now.
Well, listen, that's a very interesting point you bring up because it does clean your head, doesn't it? It sort of makes you feel a little bit less cluttered. However, there is one program you've missed that's very pertinent to what we're talking about.
Oh, right.
Did you come across a program called Black Mirror?
Black Mirror? That was the Charlie Brooker thing. Yes.
That's right. Wrote the book.
No, I haven't come across that one yet, no.
The second one is called 15 Million Credits, right? And it's all set in the future when advertising is maxed out crazy. It's like it's on walls, like it's in your room. There's a giant screen that turns itself on every now and again with adverts. And you have to amass credits through a cycling game that you can then spend on not having to look at the adverts. Right. So you can really opt out for some kind of some kind of credit system that you earn through manual labor of cycling, right? To presumably power all of the screens that are doing the advertising, right? So very interesting circular thing going on. And you see what it's like for someone when they run out of credits and they're forced to view advertising. And when you watch that, you're like, wow, that's crazy. And then you think to yourself, that's exactly what it's like now. We are completely, advertising is by definition completely forced. Right? And that's a lack of freedom too, is that people can own your information, can profile you for maximum buying habit inducement, right? All of that isn't a part of a resource-based economy. And so ergo, you feel, well, for a start, things look cleaner because there's no advertising everywhere. There's no billboards posted with stuff. You've got more time on the media like the radio and the TV for actual content because you don't have to have like 8 minutes every 15 minutes lost on advertising and the continuity broken. Meaning that until now, 24 has consisted of episodes that have never been 24 hours, right? And no one thinks that's weird. Yeah. Like, that's just what it's like, the way that we organize it now. 24 is shorter, right? Advertising is everywhere. So there's going to be everything's going to seem a little bit more cohesive, even on just the TV and radio front. Yeah. It seems quite weird. So, you have that. And obviously, because you're not continually selling things to people and because to employ technology as it exists and as it will be in a centralized way, of course, does mean, for all the reasons we've discussed that we won't go through now, the end of the monetary system. And that's seen in pockets already and mostly in technology. Look at freeware, look at open source. It's a mass amount of stuff. And of course, it's around the technology. So that's basically that core of freeness is extended out, basically. Then you have a lot of even more freedom because you're not going to be shackled to a job,
Exactly. It's one of the
things. It's something we don't have to give as something anymore. Not completely. Now we can get into all kinds of like alternative jobs and stuff, but I think that goes better in the society section, doesn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it's on the point of how freer we are when we aren't shackled to a job. It's just like one of the things that I say to people on a regular basis. If I'm if I'm just engaging with them on just a pedestrian level, not like, bringing them to like this intellectual conversation, if I don't feel there's time for that, or if they're not inclined to it, I just ask them, how much wonderfully freer would your life be if money was no object and you didn't have to, quote unquote, work for a living?
Yeah, exactly. And what's the answer you get, man? What's the answer you get every time?
I normally get, oh, it'll be nice. Or, I'd love that. Or, it's like a lifelong holiday, isn't it?
Do people tell you what they would like to do in that case? As an occupation?
Well, that is probably one thing I should start asking, because people generally, they react to that, but then they don't expand upon it, sort of thing. Yeah. But one thing I should start asking is, like, if they've responded affirmatively to that, I should say, well, I'll tell you what, in such a system, what would you do?
Sure.
I've
asked quite a lot, and this actually fits to the next sort of two bits that we're talking about, which is essentially after the sort of general freedoms, like sense of self, morality, and even going beyond morality to like spirituality. Yeah. If you think about it, for a start, a lot of people right now, and I think it was quite succinctly put in a book I was reading recently. I think it was The Lights in the Tunnel by Martin Ford, which is about, technological unemployment. He said, and I think it's true, most people's jobs isn't what they would do normally, right? It's not what they're into. And it's forced in that sense, not just in the timetabling of it, but the fact that it's an area that may not be, well, it's not essentially a voluntary area at all, is it? It's what you've had to do, whatever that is, right? And of course it changes. And there's a core few people who do have the kind of jobs that, as he puts, defines them, right? Which is okay, technological evangelists, for example, I think live very contented lives because they're so into it and they essentially influence and predict it. People like Ray Kurzweil, I think, have jobs that are rewarding. Do you know what I mean? That's what makes it so special as well. But most people, it's not that at all, isn't it? It's not the case. So anything that's done in this new economy, which of course will still have positions in the sense that people, as they do now, will be doing what could be termed charity work. It's just that the charity work that's involved in the future is not going to be about rehousing people or finding, a house, solving some kind of homeless problem, because the resolution of those problems is the society you're in. And so, but there's going to be other stuff. I can't predict what it's going to be, but there'll be something that requires someone to pitch in, but it'll be the kind of stuff because you do it, because you understand that, helping with a certain project or fulfilling a certain dream has positive effects on you, of course, because you're doing something that you actually want to do, and on society as a whole, because you aren't doing it for money. You're doing it because it is reciprocally beneficial to you and society as a whole. As weird as that sounds, but that's going to be the way that people think. And I think that's going to make people have a sense of self that we just absolutely don't have now. How are you a person who isn't the actions that they perform? Do you know? You're a banker, right? That has a certain set of preconditions for you to be a successful banker in society. It means quite a lot of personal, outward-facing features of the job. But you get home, you're a completely different person. You're actually an artist, and you want the end of the monetary system and all this, but you're going to work as a banker. What kind of identity is that? And it's not just bankers, it's anyone, right? It's been me in certain jobs, I'm like, man, I don't want to do, this isn't me. You say, this isn't me. And that's literal, So you're going to have a lot of that sense. And I think because you are involved in stuff that you find beneficial, that you think is, quote, giving something back, even though there isn't that kind of exchange anymore, it's just giving something, right? I think if you look at the general morality of where people are at when they are helping in, for example, charitable stuff, or if they're, in some kind of grassroots campaign, they're basically living a life of trying to bring positive influence. There's quite a few of them. There's a lot of people.
A hell of a lot.
Those are decent values, right? Okay, there's 500,000 or so of us, but there's so many other people